presentation.
I forgot to tell you, I wanted you to introduce me as Michael from the Mullen Jersey Show.
You want
So
me to do
if
that? I can do that.
no, you're fine, you're fine. But yeah, so if you're watching this and you haven't checked out the Mullen Jersey Show, you got to check out the Mullen Jersey Show. And it's the hottest window cleaning, pressure washing TV show, the Mullen Jersey Show, mullenjersey.com. So there's my little plug for that. Yeah, we're going to be talking about direct mail today. I've gotten a lot of questions. People have texted to me, posted online, all of that. And I've asked a ton of different people a ton of questions. The old saying is there's nothing new under the sun. So if you think I ripped you off in this, you're probably right. And you ripped somebody off before that. So we're going to be pretty basic here today. If you've heard my presentations in NOLA, some of this is a repeat of that. And so if you want to skip towards the end, I'll talk a little bit more strategy at the end. But at the beginning, we're going to just sort of talk sort of how to and sort of how to get started with the direct mail process. So direct mail is only going to work if it fits within your company, what you're trying to accomplish. And so the first and most important thing when you're trying to start to understand direct mail is you want to understand it within the context of all the other marketing methods you can do. You know, SEO, pay-per-click or Facebook ads, yellow pages, flyers, direct mail. Those are all some different marketing methods. And what I like about direct mail is it's a outbound direct marketing method. The goal of it is to go out and get the person, whether they're looking for you or not. You're going to go out there, you're going to stir up a desire in them for whatever your service is, window cleaning, pressure washing, roof cleaning, whatever, rather than just sitting back waiting for them to think they need you and then to hit up Google and then hope you land at the top. So direct mail, it has to be part of a whole scheme. It can't be just one standalone thing, but it is a really important piece. And if you look at huge industries, Verizon and AT&T and all these huge companies with mega million-dollar marketing budgets, they spend a lot of money on direct mail, and it's because it still works. And so when you look at direct mail, you've got a bunch of different options of sort of how you want to accomplish putting something in someone's mailbox and getting their attention that way. You can buy a list. You can purchase a list that can be broken down by household income or home value or however you want to break it down for different zip codes in different areas. You can buy a list of all the doctors in zip code 90210. And so you can buy a list. You can also make your own demographic lists. We've had really good success with that, with compiling addresses in areas that we know we want to work, and then sending them real targeted postcards. And then EDDM saturation mailing is just another one of those options. So we're going to talk specifically in this piece about the EDDM method and how to get started with that. But don't write off some of these other things, these demographic lists. So we're going to be talking about Every Door Direct Mail. It's a program that the post office has put together, and the reason that it works so well is because it allows you a lot of customization. You don't have to just mail to an entire zip code. You can drill all the way down into a carrier route. If you look at, this is a screenshot from in the post office website, eddm.ups.com, I think, maybe eddm.ups.gov. You guys are smart, you'll figure it out. If you look down here towards the bottom, you can see here's zip code 90210, and they have it broken down by the different carrier routes. So there's, in this first route that's shown there, there's 410 residential deliverable addresses there, 505 in the next route, 401 in the next route, so on and so forth. And so you can literally drill down to the carrier route level. You don't have to mail to every single address in a whole zip code. What that does is, if you've got apartment complexes, for example, that are in a zip code and you don't want to mail to those, you just take out the carrier route that delivers to those apartment complexes. And so that's a lot of why this EDDM has been really successful, because it allows people to sort of focus into the niches that they want to hit, that they want to mail, where they have work already, where they want to get new work. And so there's a couple of different options. As you can see from the screen here, there's EDDM Retail right here, and there's EDDM BMEU, which is the Business Mail Entry Unit. And so we'll talk just real briefly about some of the pros and cons of both options. EDDM Retail, one of the huge pros is that you don't have to buy a mailing permit. It costs a couple $100 a year, so you can save some money by just going the EDDM Retail route and not having to purchase the mail permit. Some cons of the EDDM Retail side: if you do not purchase the permit, you can only mail 5,000 pieces per day, and your pieces must be more than 11.5 inches in length or more than 6 1/8 inches in height. And so you're a little bit more limited in what sizes you can mail. If you have the bulk mail permit, then you can mail some more variety of different sizes if that's something that interests you. But if you're only going to be mailing, you know, a few thousand pieces here or there, then the EDDM Retail is probably going to be the best method for you, as long as you're not trying to mail more than 5,000 pieces a day. The EDDM Business, one of the pros is obviously you can send as many as you want to. And then another pro is there's a little bit more size flexibility. The con is a couple $100 for the mail permit. So if you're just getting started, the EDDM Retail is going to be probably the way for you to go just to get started. You don't have to buy anything to get started, and that'll allow you to sort of experiment with it and, you know, see if direct mail is going to be something that you want to pursue. So you haven't ever sent a direct mail campaign before and you're looking to get started, here's really basic sort of step-by-step, and you may want to jot these down or you know, work through these one at a time. The first thing to do is nail down your actual service area, whether that's looking at a map or whether you just know in your mind, here's the areas I service. And if you know what areas you service, chances are good that you don't know every zip code in that area. I know when I did this, I guess it was 2.5 or 3 years ago, when I first sort of did this little exercise, there was a lot of zip codes that I just didn't know offhand. You know some of the main ones in the main towns, but write down every zip code in that area. Then you want to get on a site called zipskinny.com, and you can pull up a ton of demographic data on each one of those zip codes. And so you can put in household income, you can put in home value, you can sort them by the age of the residents there, really whatever works for you, whatever you're trying to target. And so you get that all that information, put it into an Excel spreadsheet. Then you can sort those zip codes by whatever you're trying to target. So if you decide you're going to target home value, if you decide you're going to target household income, you can sort it by those. And so that will give you an idea of where you want to focus your time, where you want to focus your energy. So do those 4 things first. Then you're going to want to go to melissadata.com. melissadata.com. They've got a ton of free information on melissadata.com, and they have zip code and address info. They tell you about carrier routes, and so that's where you can look at some of this information, learn a little bit more about this carrier route 90210C059. Melissa Data will tell you more about that. As you can see, the post office website here gives you some information. You can, over here, you can click and it'll show you, the percentage of whatever age you want to know. It'll show you the income, and it'll show you the family size, the household size, not house size, not square footage, but how many people live in that house. So the post office gives you some information, but Melissa Data will give you even more information on 90210C059 or C060 or whatever you're interested in doing. So go to melissadata.com and do some research, figure out where you want to target, Figure out where your customers are right now. That may help you figure out where you want to put your energy. Okay. Another huge important thing as you're getting started is you're picking out a mailer. Um, I was talking to a good friend of mine, and we were talking about the whole game of EDDM, of direct mail marketing. The whole game is to get someone to pay attention to your piece just for a second before they throw it in the trash. And if you're like me, you get a ton of junk mail at your house. You get these Val packs, you get, all these different things. And 99.99% of it ends up in the trash before you even really look at it. It's a very quick decision. And so when you pick your mailers, you really want to think about that. How do you grab their attention? So you want them to be gripping. You want them to grab people's attention early. They need to be professional because they're the first touch point most people have with your company. If they haven't ever heard of you before, then this mailing piece is the first experience they have with you. And then big just goes sort of along with grabbing their attention again. It's hard to ignore a large direct mail piece. And so I told the story in NOLA 2 years ago, and I'll share it again here briefly. This is a piece that a company here sent out, and their prices are pretty low. And so they have, if you see over here on the left-hand side, they've got a 33 windows for $199. And so they sent this out. This was in a Val pack. And we sent out a larger piece, which you can't see, but you can see behind it is one of the WCR cards, the girl on the couch card. And we sent out those cards to the same sort of area that this Val pack had gone out to. And a gentleman called us, and we gave him a quote over the phone. He had 35 windows, and I don't remember the specifics of the job, but I know it was 35 windows, and our price to clean the 35 windows was $555. I remember that really clearly. And so he ended up going with us for $555 over the other company for $199. And so the guys did the work, and when they came back, they brought this Valpak piece to me. He had stuck it on his fridge for me to see it. And so they brought it to me, and he had left a note asking me to call him. So I gave him a call. I thought he was going to be freaking out, telling me that we had overcharged him. So I called him back, and he said, hey, I worked in marketing for a lot of years before I retired, and I just want to let you know that your piece was a phenomenal piece that you sent out. And I had this other piece that was a lot lower price, but it was just flimsy. It's basically just on paper, and even though their price was a lot lower, it just didn't seem like they were a company that I wanted to do business with. So I just wanted to congratulate you on doing an awesome job with your piece. It was really well designed. It was gorgeous. It was professional, and so just wanted to give you sort of a pat on the back about that and tell you good job. Well, I didn't tell him, but I didn't do any of the design work on that. That was a WCRA piece, and so it's made a lot of money. These WCRA postcards have made a lot of money for me and for a bunch of other people as well. So if you're not a WCRA member, really, I would tell you that it's worth it to look into joining the WCRA just for these pieces alone. They're pieces that have been tested over time and all of that. So it's worth looking into. So then as far as addressing goes, that's sort of the next piece when it comes down to getting your things ready to mail. And this is a question I get all the time. What should my addressing look like? So you've got sort of two elements, your simplified addressing and then your indicia. So if you use, this is one of an old All County piece, I think. Yeah, you can see the expiration date is 2011. You can see the addressing there is ECRWSS residential customer right here. That's the simplified addressing. And then up here you have what's called the indicia. Pre-sort standard, U.S. postage paid, their post office, and their permit number, right? So if you're going to be doing the business side, like we talked about up here, EDDM retail or EDDM business, if you're going to be doing it EDDM business, this is what you want it to look like. The ECRWSS, residential customer, and then your postage paid and your permit number. You'll have a permit, remember, you'll pay for that. I don't have an example in this presentation of what it'll look like if you do EDDM retail because I do the business version myself. But basically, instead of having the permit number here, it would just say EDDM retail here. And down here, you don't have to do the ECRWSS. You could just put local customer, residential customer, something like that. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to have 2 links to PDFs that walk through the specific details of that a little bit more clearly. So that's some of the real basic how to get started if you've never done it before. Those are some of the things that you may not think about, but that are important. And another thing that I would say that's really important as you get started, go ahead and just call whatever post office is local to you. Talk to the business mail acceptance person there, the person who works in the business mail entry unit, BMEU. Talk to that person. Go ahead and start to try to build a relationship with them. Some of them are awesome. They'll answer all your questions. They really know exactly what's going on. If you call the post office and that person's not awesome, call a different post office and just try to find somebody who's helpful, who can answer your questions. But you want it to be somebody local if possible, because it kind of is a pain in the neck, but every sort of post office in every area is just a tiny bit different on how they interpret the rules of what EDDM, how it should be accepted. So, for example, the post office here requires that we present our pieces in bundles of 50. The rules say that it should be in bundles of either 50 or 100. But if I put it in bundles of 100, they will not accept it at the BMEU here. And so the only way I knew that is because I called them ahead of time and asked them. So it's worth your few minutes of being on hold or whatever to call and talk to the person in the BMEU in your area before you try to get your first piece together. Even maybe get a sample piece and take it into them and let them check it out and make sure that they're going to accept it before you bring it down to them. So that's some of the technical how-to things. This is I think going to be a WCR webinar. Most of my strategy stuff I kind of keep to myself a little bit. So I'm just going to do a few sort of basic tips here, and really it just comes down to what you're trying to accomplish, how you do it, how many you send, where you send them. But I'll give you a few things to help you get started. Number one, my first suggestion as far as strategy goes is consistency is king. Very few people are going to call you based on the first EDDM campaign you send. And so when you budget for it, please don't plan on a 1.5% to 2% return rate. Don't send 1,000 cards and expect to get 15 jobs out of it. That's just not realistic. That just doesn't really happen. You need to be consistent over time. You need to send to the same areas over time. You need to build up a reputation in these areas. That's incredibly important. Number two is don't overanalyze, especially based on small sample sizes. You can't do one mailing and say direct mail doesn't work for me or doesn't work here or direct mail sucks. You can't do that because there's so many variables that go into whether a campaign works or not. What day of the week was it delivered? How was the weather when it was delivered? Did your coupon suck? Did you use a bad card? Did you send to an area that doesn't really respond well to direct mail? On and on and on and on and on. Way too many variables to make a hasty decision based on a small sample size. What you want to do is you want to continue to commit time and money to this and continue to experiment, find out what works for you. There's folks who've been like I know All County has 10-something years of direct mail history. There's a company up in Boston, a friend of mine. He does like almost 1 million pieces a year. Humongous sample sizes. Most of people who are viewing this, and even me, aren't going to be at that level. Our goals are different, our companies are different, on and on and on. And so don't feel like you need to drop $100,000 onto direct mail, but also don't think you can just do one mailing and wake up with 100 new customers the next day. Another question a guy texted me and asked me is if I focused more on home value or on household income. Really just two different schools of thought. It varies by area, but here I tend to focus more on home value than on household income. Folks with, fairly nice houses are our target market, and in this area, a lot of those people are retired. They don't have a high household income anymore, even though they have a pretty good net worth. And so household income is pretty deceiving. There can be somebody who has $1 million house who, makes $100,000 a year, but they've got an enormous net worth, and so on and so forth. So personally, I focus a little bit more on home value than on household income. Not one to the exclusion of the other, but that's just how it is for me. But different areas are going to be different. The reason that I know that is because I know my area. So you need to learn about your area, learn about your context, and then you can make a decision about that. If you're in a place that doesn't have a ton of retirees, it has a ton of high-powered attorneys and doctors and so on and so forth, people who are earning big bucks, household income may be the place to go for you. So it just depends on where you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And then another question that somebody asked me is, should you go broad or should you go targeted when you do your mailings, when you do direct mail? EDDM can be from extremely broad down to somewhat targeted. It can't really be very targeted. There's more ways to get more targeted than EDDM, which is some of the things that we talked about up here, these demographic lists. Another service that's sort of come on the market pretty recently is Street Bidder. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with that or not. I'm sure you've probably heard about it a little bit. But Street Bidder allows you to be extremely targeted, and that's another direct mail option, and it's all about getting people's attention. We compile lists in different areas that we want to mail to, and so that allows us to be real targeted. And so we do a combination of both broad and targeted. But I would say, especially when you're getting started, it's probably better to be a little bit more targeted rather than going extremely broad. And if you can afford to send 15,000 pieces, it's way better to send 3 mailings of 5,000 pieces, one every month for 3 months, than to just send to 15,000 people all at once. So what I mean by that is you can send to 15,000 people one time or send to the same 5,000 people 3 times. I would pick the same 5,000 people 3 times all day because you're going to build up sort of a relationship with them. And so that's really building their trust in you is important. Then as far as budget, you're going to need to have a plan for this. If you just throw out EDDM cards whenever you have some spare money, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. That sort of shotgun approach is not going to accomplish anything. You're just going to be throwing money down the drain. So you need to have a budget for this. You need to plan for it. You need to be consistent with it. And really, you always need to be thinking a few weeks, a few months, a few mailings ahead. You can't really wake up on a Monday and say, man, spring is here. I better get out a postcard. Or wake up on a Monday and say, oh, well, Thanksgiving is going to be here in a week. I better get out a holiday postcard. You have to be planning ahead of time, and that includes budgeting ahead of time. So those are some just some pretty general thoughts as far as strategy goes. And another thing that I didn't make notes about here that a guy asked me about was coupons. What sort of specials do I give? I give really good specials on my direct mail cards that I send out. I'm talking $100 off. I'll literally put a coupon code that says $100 off on certain services. I want to get people's attention. I want them to call me, and we've got a pretty good close rate on these cards when folks reach out to us based on these cards. And so I know if we can get somebody to notice it, get somebody interested enough with our offer that they'll give us a shout, then we've got a pretty good chance of landing them. So as far as that goes, we're pretty aggressive as far as our coupons go. And one little tip, when you do expiration dates, don't put a year on your expiration date. Here's one All County did. This code is good from blah, blah, to December 23rd, 2011. So this is gutter cleaning right here. Here's a window cleaning one. What we would do is we would say expires on December 23rd. Then if we get 100,000 of these printed, or we get 40,000 of these printed, or we get 5,000 of these printed, if for some reason something comes up, we get extremely busy, we only send out 50% of what we had printed, we can just sit on the stock until next year. I've literally got a stack sitting within eyesight of me right now. I think it's probably 15,000 pieces that are sitting here waiting for next spring that we just got too busy and we pulled back this past spring on sending these out. And so they have an expiration date of June 1st on them, but no year. If I put June 1st, 2013, then they wouldn't really work for next spring. But because I just put June 1st on them, they'll work again for this coming spring. So that's another little tip as far as the expiration date. So hopefully that is helpful. A couple of resources here. You can jot these down, put these in your web browser or whatever. Maybe Jessica can put these somewhere in the thread or something like that. But these are two different PDFs about EDDM. Basically a quick reference guide and a user guide. They sort of give you the gist of what sizes will be accepted, how to bundle them, how to do all the paperwork that has to be filled out to accompany them. I did not put any time here into talking about the different paperwork that needs to be put together to accompany EDDM when you drop it off with the post office, but those links talk about that more in depth. And so check those out. They will answer a ton of your questions.